Hey everyone. So, I'm not married, fun fact. But I've heard a lot about marriage, and from what I've heard, it sounds like a pretty good thing. Meaning, like, obviously everything in life has its ups and downs, but big adol, it sounds like a very positive experience. Which is why I'm shocked when I open up Parshat Ki Teitzei and I see the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu describes marriage. Because there are three different descriptions of marriage in this parsha, all starting with this phrase, Ki yikach ish isha, when a man takes a woman. Now, the first time we have it, this is the following story. Ki yikach ish isha, there's a man, there's a woman, they get married, the man ends up hating the woman, so he starts spreading rumors about the woman, and telling everyone that she claimed she was a virgin, but it turns out that she's not actually a virgin. And the Torah spends 8 long psukim describing what happens if the man is lying, and what happens if the man is telling the truth and she actually cheated on him, and who has to pay money, and who gets stoned, and it's really gory and really depressing. That's description number 1 of marriage in the parsha. Description number 2, also starting with ki yikach ish isha, is not any better. Man, woman, they get married. It ends up being that the marriage doesn't work out, so they get divorced. Then the woman goes and marries a second man, but that doesn't work either. Then she gets divorced and wants to remarry her first husband, even though the first husband doesn't want to take her back. And are they allowed to get married? Are they not allowed to get married? And it's again 4 really long, depressing psukim, not painting marriage in a really good light. That's example number 2 of marriage in the parsha. And finally, we have example number 3, also starting with ki yikach ish isha, where it's one short, simple pasuk that tells us the following. If a man and woman get married and neither of them have been married before, then they have 1 year. He doesn't get drafted to go to war. We shouldn't bother them for communal responsibilities. We just let them have 1 year of happiness. But that's it. And the imbalance is something that's shocking. We spend so much time and so much energy speaking about how a marriage can go wrong, and almost no time and no energy speaking about how a marriage can go right. And we're left with the obvious question. Isn't this antithetical to what the Torah believes in? Don't we think marriage is a good thing and not a bad thing? So shouldn't we spend more time speaking about the good parts of marriage than the bad parts of marriage? So to answer this question, I want to take a step back and jump to a Gemara in the beginning of Masechet Kiddushin. So first we have the opening Mishnah, Masechet Kiddushin, which has 4 famous words. Ha'isha nikneit b'shalosh drachim. That a woman is acquired in 3 different ways. And why marriage is referred to as the acquisition of a woman, that's a whole separate conversation, not for now. But either way, the Mishnah is telling us that there are 3 drachim, 3 different ways in which a man and a woman can get married. And the Gemara on Daf Bet Amud Bet asks the following technical question. Why is it that the Mishnah refers to marriage as a derech, as a process, as a way of doing things, instead of using the more normal word of davar, that there are 3 things that you do, 3 dvarim that you do in order to get married? And in the process of giving a bunch of technical answers, the Gemara gives the following analogy on Daf Bet Amud Bet, the following mashal, the following analogy to describe marriage. And it compares it to the following. A Baal, an owner of an item who lost that item, who now has an Avedah, a lost item out there, and he's going to look for that lost item. So Rashi, on that Gemara, is bothered. What in the world does this analogy of a person searching for a lost item have anything to do with marriage? So when explaining this word Avedah, and explaining what this lost item is, Rashi says 2 words. Achat mitzalotav. This lost item is one of his ribs. A person is looking for one of his ribs. What in the world is Rashi talking about? So we have to jump back to the beginning of Sefer Bereshit, where we have the story of Adam, the first man ever to be created, who was lonely, because every other living creature in the world had a pair, had a partner, and he had nobody. So God put him in this deep sleep, put him in this tardema, and while Adam was slumbering, Hashem reached into Adam's body and took out achat mitzalotav, one of his ribs, and shaped that rib into Chava, into the first woman. And then we had the first man, the first woman, they became the first couple. And if we look at the way the Torah describes them back in Sefer Bereshit, the Torah uses the description of basar achad, they were one flesh. Meaning, yes, Adam and Chava were 2 different individuals, but they weren't just 2 people that were slapped together and told to form a couple, no. They were 2 individuals that were meant to belong together. And when they were together, it was like they were one unit. Now we jump back to our Gemara in Masechet Kiddushin. And this analogy makes so much more sense. Why is marriage described to a person seeking for a lost item? Because marriage isn't just this thing that you do. There are 2 individuals who were perfect beforehand, and suddenly they decide to come together to form a partnership. No. It's 2 individuals who have been seeking something, searching for something their whole lives. They may have not known it. They may have had happy lives until that point, which is normal. But subconsciously, there was something a little incomplete, something a little missing. And finally, when they get married, they now have that incomplete part of them filled. they have found their lost rib, and now they have finally become basar echad, one unit, one flesh. It's the reason why the Mishnah doesn't refer to marriage as a davar, as a thing that you do. One moment you're not married and suddenly you flick on a switch and you become married. No, because the act of marriage, the ceremony, yes, that has to happen, but that's not the only defining factor of marriage. In fact, that's not the most important part of marriage. The marriage ceremony is just the culmination of this really long process, not this davar, but this derech, this journey that has been going on since a person's birth, where they were always a little incomplete. And now they finally, after a lifetime of searching, have filled in this incomplete gap. So now jumping back to Parshat Ki Teitzei. Why is it that the Torah spends so much time describing the depressing side of marriage, but almost no time describing the positive side of marriage? Well, it's because marriage is a derech. Marriage is two incomplete pieces suddenly coming together and forming basar echad, becoming one unit. It's like these two magnet halves that have been slowly coming together and finally they click. Marriage is something that's natural. It's taking something that's lacking and finally filling it up. And something that makes sense, and something that's intuitive. And therefore Hashem, by his silence, by him not telling us anything about marriage, is actually teaching us something extremely important, which is that I don't have to tell you anything about marriage. My silence is okay, because there's nothing more for me to say. Ki yikach ish isha, when a man takes a woman, that's it. You understand this. This makes sense. It is intuitive to you. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to spend a lot of time speaking about when a marriage can go wrong, chas v'shalom, because that's not natural, that's not intuitive, and therefore he has to explain it. But the marriage itself, when a man and a woman come together to form a unit, that makes sense. Now, obviously, practically, marriage isn't that simple. The whole process of dating and getting married and the marriage itself is rocky and can have its ups and downs. But the concept, the theory behind marriage, that makes sense to us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that with his silence. But not telling us anything about marriage, he's telling us that he doesn't need to explain marriage to us because it makes sense. Why am I sharing this with you now? No, I'm not looking to get married right now. But I am looking for a different kind of relationship. Because right now we're in the month of Elul. A month that it's commonly known as the acronym of 4 words from Shir HaShirim, Ani Lidodi V'Dodi Li. I am to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. During Elul, we have a different kind of marriage. We're working on forming an intimate relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Hashem. And if we look at the way the Torah describes our relationship with Hashem, it's very, very, very similar to the way it describes a marriage. And I'm not just talking about the love poem that we find in Shir HaShirim. Take next week's Parsha, in Parshat Ki Teitzei, where we have the infamous Tochacha, all the curses that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us if we don't follow his way. And we look at the actual words. First, we have a couple of psukim, a few psukim describing what happens if we do what we're supposed to do and we keep the commandments and how we're going to be rewarded. And then we have tens and tens of horrible, horrific psukim describing what happens if things go wrong. And we have the same question. Why does God focus so much on the bad instead of focusing on the good? But if we take our model of marriage and bring it over to our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it suddenly makes sense. God is telling us, I don't need to spend time and energy focusing on what happens if you keep my commandments, because that's not something that I need to explain to you. That side of our relationship, you doing what I ask you to do and me helping you out when you ask me to do something, that's something that's natural. That's something that's intuitive. I don't need to explain that to you. And it's something that we want to translate over into our relationship with God. Because we don't want it to be that every single Friday afternoon I start asking myself the question, do I want to keep Shabbos this week or do I not want to keep Shabbos this week? Or every time we see a cheeseburger, we ask ourselves the question, do I want to eat this or do I not want to eat it? Our relationship with God should be something where it's Friday night, so obviously I keep Shabbos. Or I see a cheeseburger, so obviously I don't eat it. It's not something I even think about. And I'm not sharing this with you because I'm trying to give you musar, because I'm trying to tell you how you should better your ways. I'm sharing this with you because this is a journey, a personal journey that I'm on in the month of Elul, of trying to shift my relationship for something that's sometimes unnatural. Sometimes I have to think about it. Is this something I want to do or is this not something I want to do? And shift it into something that's natural and intimate and obvious to me. And I'm inviting you to join me on that journey. So if you really want to give me chizuk and you're really feeling brave, send me a message. Tell me you're joining me on the journey. Or if not, you don't have to. You could think of it to yourself. But I want this to be something that we all work on in the month of Elul, making our relationship with God something that's natural, something that's intuitive, not something that we have to think about all the time. So I hope everyone has a meaningful Elul and a great Shabbos, and let's all work on bettering this relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu together.